Hello everybody, welcome back to a new YouTube video. Today we're going to be talking about Tropical Storm Beryl and the abnormally heightened tornado potential that's going to come with it. First, let's go over to the experts page at the Weather Prediction Center. And here we go. So Tropical Storm Beryl is currently 65 mile per hour with pressure of, I believe, 992 millibars. Recon is flying through it right now. They found flight level winds of around 60 knots and surface winds of around 45 to 50 knots. That will equal around a 65 mile per hour storm, which is what they found, and the flight ended at around 9:11, it seems like. Here's one of the drop sondes from the so-called eye, and you can see it's 992 millibars right now. Let's go over and look at some satellite imagery of Beryl, and you can see how it is developing some more thunderstorm towers around the center. It's not particularly organized right now, and it's fighting dry air, but I do think, from what some of my friends have told me who are a lot better with tropics than I am, the conditions towards the coastline of Texas do get better, so it probably will strengthen to a hurricane there, probably a lower end hurricane. It's right now fighting with a good amount of dry air. You can kind of see the dry air is wrapping around the center here. Now what this dry air will do is it will heighten this tornado risk. You have abnormally dry air within a tropical cyclone because of its proximity to the EML source region. We'll talk about that more in a little bit. Track-wise, this thing is expected to become a hurricane here. I'm going to open up Epic Pen because that'll help me out here. But this thing is expected to become a hurricane right at landfall. It's probably going to be a it's probably going to be a Category 1, potentially a higher strength Category 1. We'll kind of have to see. But it's expected to remain a hurricane until 7 in the morning Monday. And then the NHC is expecting this thing to kind of reach Illinois by Wednesday morning, the center of it at least. And so yeah. On Monday, the highest tornado threat, we can go over to the Storm Prediction Center's page and find that out. Monday, the highest tornado threat, actually not Monday first, today the highest tornado threat is going to be for areas around Houston. There is a 5% tornado risk for Houston, Pasadena, Beaumont, Sugar Land, and the Woodlands, Texas area. A few tornadoes are possible along the Texas coast as Beryl approaches. The tornado risk is likely to increase as the evening approaches, as Beryl moves closer to the land, and the outer bands move closer. Before we go into that, I'm sorry for jumping around, but I'm going to look at the visible satellite, and you can see Beryl's center is right here. You can pretty clearly tell it's stacked at this point. It's trying to wrap convection around, but it's also wrapping that really dry air into the system as well, which is causing it not to be able to get these hot towers and organize. If this system can close off, we'll probably have a low strength Cat 1, potentially high Cat 1. I'd say the strongest the storm will probably reach is the strongest its ceiling is probably a lower end Cat 2, but that's pretty unlikely. Peak storm surge with this system, 4 to 6 feet in Matagorda Bay, and then between Galveston and Mesquite Bay, we have 4 to 6 feet as well. Rainfall potential. This is going to be potentially one of the bigger stories from this system. We are expecting a lot of rain from Little Rock, Arkansas, or really from St. Louis all the way down into kind of the Corpus Christi region right in here. And there's probably going to be even more rain further to the north when the storm isn't classified as a tropical cyclone anymore, and classified as subtropical or just post-tropical. Here's what the Weather Prediction Center has flash flood-wise right now. This is for day 3, which is Wednesday through Wednesday morning, and you can kind of see those timestamps here. So they're expecting a pretty significant flood event through tonight into tomorrow and through Tuesday morning. Now let's go more in depth with the tornado risk. Here we go. Here's for Monday. So we have a 5% tornado corridor from just southwest of Little Rock down to Houston. A low shot at some damaging wind gusts as well, and maybe some hail back in southwest Texas. The Storm Prediction Center has some pretty high-end wording for a 5% tornado risk. At least a few tornadoes are possible along the northeast quadrant of Beryl as it tracks northeast. That suggests that they potentially thought about upgrading this outlook. here we go. Here's kind of what our situation looks like. I'm going to use the HRRR. It's not going to be the most accurate at all, but it should give us a picture of what Beryl could look like as it makes landfall. I think our first tornado threat could be around 21Z today. This tornado threat won't be very high, but you can see we have these outer band storms that kind of move into the region. And with these outer bands, we have surface-based instability of 2,000 to 3,000 joules per kilogram and strong low-level thermodynamics. This brings some significant tornado parameter values into the region and an overall parameter space that could be favorable for tornadoes, although the wind shear is lacking because the center is further south. I'm going to go into pivotal weather so that we can use the HRRR on here and actually pull forecast soundings, because that's going to be very useful for kind of the processes that I'm going to go through here. The tornado threat should really ramp up as we get toward 12 a.m. and past that. You can see here's the center of Beryl right here. I think the HRRR is not resolving another band of convection that could fire up here. You can kind of see if we pull a forecast sounding there just north of Galveston, you can see that you have some pretty strong wind shear profiles that are in place here and decent amounts of instability for the time of the day as well. Your mid-level lapse rates aren't super robust, so we're not expecting robust updrafts, but storms that are particularly organized could produce a tornado or two. Now, one of the biggest factors on why Beryl could be such a prolific tornado producer is because of this. We'll set it to 21Z, which is 4 p.m. Central Standard Time on Monday. You can see Beryl has emerged with this shortwave trough over kind of the central United States here. You can see those isobar lines, kind of a line like that. You have a pretty powerful system over the Great Lakes. Beryl is merging with that in a system to its west, which is causing the mid-level flow to be close to over 70 knots. Looking into the NAM solution, you can also see that. We'll flip over to the CONUS. You can see that pretty well with the NAM. NAM really ramps it up in intensity, and then also on Tuesday it merges even more with the system, and we get more of a classic synoptic look here. I don't even know. This looks like something you would see kind of in the fall, where you have a pretty clear shortwave over the Mississippi River Valley region with a strong speed max close to 60 knots. This is really going to power this system. Now, looking into tornado potential tomorrow specifically, we have very strong low-level winds expected with 50 to 70 knots at 850 millibars. And we're going to see several different shrimp bands. The problem is we're going to have to see how destabilization evolves. The last couple runs before this run had stronger destabilization, so we'll kind of have to see what happens with that. We do have decent mixed layer cape that's being advected in a pretty large warm sector all the way into kind of Illinois and Indiana. Taking a sounding here kind of in southeastern Texas here, or southeast Texas, southwest Louisiana. We can see we have a streamwise and very curved hodograph here. We have modest instability with 2,000 joules per kilogram of surface base cape between the red and the white lines here. And we have our steep low-level lapse rates and good low-level thermals up to about 600 millibars. This will power a tornado threat with the outer bands of Beryl throughout the day on Monday. Looks like the tornado threat could start to kind of get into Arkansas as we get into later in the evening. It will kind of depend on how the thermodynamics work out with it. Looks like the highest tornado threat though would be in Louisiana. Take a forecast sounding. I'm going to bet you that these won't be as mixed as the HRRR shows, because the HRRR has a tendency of overmixing. So we're going to go check the NAM 3 kilometer. NAM 3 kilometer is probably going to have this system in a little bit too strong at this point. 995. Not sure if it's going to be 995 when it's here, but it probably has closer to the right idea of what the thermodynamics might look like. And yeah, it might not be this moist, but you do see we have a pretty prolific amount of instability for a tropical cyclone here based off the NAM 3K solution. Decent low-level thermals with lapse rates of 6.7 in the low levels and 3 cape of 200. That's going to power your storms to be really spinny and have a lot of juice to them in the lower levels, which is what really matters for tornado production. And then you can see your hodograph is very clockwise and curved. This will help just help make the storms rotate a lot. And you can see the hodograph is quite enlarged from right motion vector, which is going to really make it so these storms are going to be inducing a lot of those winds that you see. Now, as we get into Tuesday, let's kind of move up here. The tornado threat on Tuesday could be pretty prolific. We'll have to kind of see how it evolves, but we have a lot of strong moisture that's being funneled in from the Gulf of Mexico. Let me go to Theta E. It'll probably do a little bit of a better job, but we have a lot of very strong moisture that's being funneled in from the Gulf of Mexico, as you can see here. Beryl's center would be located here. It's probably going to be either extratropical at this point or barely tropical. And you can see all that moisture being funneled in. We have some sort of warm front boundary kind of generally located in here at this point. Here and south of there, we will have tornado potential, and particularly pretty strong tornado potential probably too. I would not be shocked if we see a couple of strong tornadoes on Tuesday and Monday, to be exact. Especially Tuesday, though, if this setup can really come to fruition and we get the surface heating needed. Currently, if the NAM3K solution would verify, you have a large amount of sunlight probably over kind of this area right in here, which is where you would destabilize, have the sun come out, and give you the low-level thermodynamics needed for tornado production with a tropical cyclone. You can see here the low-level thermodynamics aren't quite there yet, as you have a little bit of a warm nose at around 700 millibar, but you can see your wind profiles are already quite clockwise and large, so this will really kind of help the tornado threat. As we get toward 3 p.m., this is when our instability starts to become quite high, 2,000 to 3,000 joules per kilogram in a small corridor there in southeastern Missouri, with values of over 2,000 joules per kilogram across the board. This is spiking our significant tornado parameter, and it really spikes up later in the evening as well. Mixed layer Cape is also 1,000 to 2,000 joules per kilogram, which is quite plentiful. And if we look at our low level wind shear, it's quite strong as well, with 0 to 3 kilometer SRH, well over 200 in most spots, right along kind of the northeast quadrant of the low pressure at this point. We're going to move into the Midwest region. For day 3, I forgot to mention, the Storm Prediction Center only has a broad marginal. I wouldn't be shocked if they kind of push it, kind of make it like this with the next update tomorrow. And we might have a slight risk kind of in here. We'll kind of have to monitor that. But this outlook's going to look drastically different tomorrow. They did mention potential for spatial and overall probabilities to go up as well. Here's a forecast sunny for later in the day. You can see your low thermodynamics are much better by this point. You also have these back surface winds, which is only helping induce your storm relative velocity. A very clockwise and curved photograph here. This will help establish long tracking mesocyclones, which is pretty rare for a hurricane. And you can see a well-vented profile, so these storms could be quite photogenic as well, but the surface moisture is quite high with PWatts of 2. You have a very moist troposphere, which is going to help with making these storms have a lot of moisture in them. You can see your wind shear values here, quite strong effective SRH at 300. Effective is the layer that I think is the most useful. Overall instability on this sounding is pretty good, 3,000 joules per kilogram of surface-based Cape and 2,000 at mixed layer. That's your storm field, which is quite high. And then you have good low-level lapse rates as well and strong 3 Cape. It's really going to help power this setup. And we can see these storms are pretty powerful for a long time. The NAM3K has the corridor on Tuesday to be kind of in here. That's kind of where the corridor is on Tuesday. You can see that low pressure tracks up northward, and you get some powerful storms to erupt in the afternoon hours. Lots of rain is expected in Illinois and Missouri, wherever on the western side of the cyclone. You can see that here. NAM will probably capture the rainfall potential better. Here you go. The NAM lights up Missouri and Illinois with 2 to 4 inch amounts, even higher than that in some spots. Let's go look at our low lapse rates, because the NAM does show that, and you can see there is quite. This is going to be kind of the corridor to watch. You have your strong southeast surface winds in southeastern Missouri with strong low-level lapse rates. So this is kind of going to be the area to watch. Oh, that's a small highlighter. this is kind of going to be the area to watch generally in here. On the northeastern side of that cyclone, strong 700 millibar winds as well, with lots of vorticity in that level. You can see this is a powerful system. Didn't mean to take a forecast sounding. This is a powerful wound up system that the NAM shows at this point. Very powerful. Now let's get another picture and look at the GFS. It's probably going to be, the GFS is a little slower with this system. It's still quite powerful though. You have strong service base instability for the GFS that gets into 1,000 joules per kilogram. It's probably going to be stronger than that because the GFS does lack in actually outputting instability values that are realistic most of the time. You can see decent moisture is present as well. And yeah, these photographs are pretty similar to the NAM 3 kilometer. Doesn't back the winds as much, but the GFS typically underdoes that a little bit. You kind of see that makes a little bit of a difference in how your low level SRH is. It does have decent low level thermodynamics for being a global model, which I'm not too shocked at. So that's kind of what the GFS picture is. Synoptically, the GFS is not as keen in as the NAM is on a bigger, more roundup system. At least this run. Last run it was a little bit stronger, and the run before that it was even stronger. So I think the overall trend might be going a little bit downward in the strength of this. We'll have to kind of see. The low level winds appear to be weakening a little bit as well. It was a lot stronger at 0Z. They're still kind of there with the newest run, so we'll kind of have to monitor. If that does keep being on the downswing, this risk is not going to be as high as it was previously. Let's see what the NAM has done. The NAM has kind of stayed at the same general strength. It's actually moved the cyclone west more in recent runs, as you can kind of see here. 500 millibar. It's pretty similar strength as well. It's just going to have to really depend on the phasing with the trough. It looks like the GFS doesn't have as favorable phasing anymore. I think it also has a weaker system at landfall, which is probably why the 500 millibar winds are not as strong. Oh no, it does have a stronger system still, 500 millibar wind wise. Looks like the phasing isn't as good as it was in previous runs. Looks like Wednesday also could be a severe risk over kind of the northeast, or Ohio Valley region, and Mid-Atlantic here with the remnants of Beryl. Strong mid-level winds and decently strong low-level winds will give off a combo for severe weather over the Mid-Atlantic. Looks like the NAM shows the same general idea with a pretty solid low-pressure system over kind of Indiana here. This is more of a typical severe weather setup, but a little bit heightened because of the remnants of the cyclone. This is not as tropical cyclone related at this point. It's more of an extra tropical low. You can see decently strong mixed layer cape, and we have pretty favorable vectors for supercell formation. Moving to the northeast with the front pushing to the east. It'll eventually go linear, but that will kind of help things stay discrete. Overall parameters look pretty elevated over kind of eastern Ohio. We can see there is a string of what probably would be supercells if it was a higher res model from Georgia all the way down into Ohio, with the highest tornado threat likely being situated over Ohio, West Virginia, and western Pennsylvania if this solution was correct. And yeah, just looking at that, you have again clockwise low level photographs with moderate instability to modest instability here. Your low level thermodynamics are decent, and you have solid 3 cape as well, which will help power these systems. Let's go over here and look at the Euro for this upcoming system. Here is a look at Tuesday, and it looks like the Euro is not at Euro's still pretty keen in. Previous runs with the Euro were a lot stronger at 1,002 millibar low. Now we're down to 1,005. The run before this had 1,005 as well, but it looked a little bit more powerful. We'll kind of have to see what happens. I'm not gonna be too inclined to trust the 60 Euro, so we'll go back to the 0Z one. Here we go. So it's northeast Arkansas, southeast Missouri area. Pretty strong low level shear there. Clockwise photographs, and we can see you have a lot of strong moisture return being funneled in here with your low pressure generally sitting here. So with the Euro, your highest tornado risk would be over kind of southeast Missouri, northeast Arkansas, western Tennessee, northern Mississippi, kind of this general Mississippi River Valley region. Mid-level winds are 40 to almost 60 knots there, and then you have pretty strong low-level flow as well, reaching over 40 knots. Taking box soundings, you can see you have modest instability between these lines here, a moist troposphere with p-watts very high, and steep low-level lapse rates aiding to decent 3 cape. And then of course you have that clockwise photograph aiding to effective storm relativity of 300. Lots of spin in the atmosphere there. Okay, that's going to do it for this one. If you guys have questions, just let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Oh.